I did want to add to that. That is a very big issue that I went out of my way to try to fix, and that is when we also have made space, which is the room mic simulation, and most importantly the room bleed, the microphone bleeds. If I'm recording a guy here, another guy here, right, simultaneously, there's going to be a certain amount of mic bleed that goes over to this guy. That's part of the sound. So when you go to do overdubs, guess what? They're all secco, all very dry. So our process, which when you get our library, we are just now finishing up the standalone program for Space Alone. You'll get that in the mail, or you download it. You put in your serial number and download it. Now what you can do is you can take your live strings, your other sample libraries, blend them together, all through the same room. So you had a question?
Yeah, can they talk a little more about like when you're doing like an episodic? Because yours, sorry, I haven't seen your show. Is that hour long?
What? Mine or his? You've seen his show.
Yeah, they're both. And do you sit and watch the whole show and try to come up with themes and stuff, or you just like get inspired and stop and say I got to go right now, or do you have a spotting session where you jot things down, ideas? How do you approach the whole show?
This is a little bit embarrassing, but I'll tell you what I've been doing. Is while spotting, which generally is with my music editor over the phone.
Which is a great luxury, actually. Because usually it's you have to spot with the producer and director who don't know what they're talking about.
God, I've done that a lot. It's and I used to do that all the time. It's only the last few years they just stopped. They just remember I did Stargate SG-1 for 10 years, and then I've been on Atlantis for 5 years. So I mean I've known these guys,
and then I worked great amount of trust.
Well, I worked with them even before that. I worked with them on Outer Limits.
Oh yeah, right.
On New Outer Limits, I worked with the same guys. And then oddly enough, guys moved on to Stargate from shows that I had worked on, other series that I had done.
Really?
From weird stuff like Diagnosis Murder. They moved over to Stargate. There was all of a sudden guys I knew. It was bizarre. And so now what I do, and I've actually found this to be kind of cool, is my movie is in Logic, and I run Logic with my music editor as we're spotting the show, and I'll just sit there and diddle on the piano, improvise, or on strings or something like that, recording it the entire time. And then so later when I go back to actually, and we watch the whole show and we do it, later I'll go back and listen to some of these kind of improvisations, and often they will have the germ of an idea in them that at least I will have something to start with, and I'm not working with a completely blank piece of paper. I've got something to just some kind of an idea. Maybe it sucks. Maybe it's something to say that's really horrible. I should do it like this. But inevitably, it gets the juices kind of going.
And isn't that, where'd Richard go?
Right here.
Yeah, I wanted to get your input on this, like serious input. Honestly. Isn't kind of what we do sort of a jam?
Well, that's how Tom Newman does it.
Oh no, but I mean with yourself, like you'll start a bass line and or whatever, or you'll start a cello line, or you start with a melody and then you like layer and layer and layer and layer.
Sometimes, sometimes to me, the best scores I've written came fully realized in my head. Usually when I'm out surfing or driving a car.
Oh really?
And I have zero musical memory.
So how do you get them down then? You write.
One time I paddled in from Zuma and ran up to a payphone and sang all the parts in.
Right.
With an answering machine.
Right. I've hummed stuff into a little recorder too.
But I think, for me a lot.
But I'm agreeing with you. The jamming to me is the last resort. It's like, okay, if I have to do that, I will.
But even if you have a melody, I think there's like counterpoint. There's different lines that come in as a result of just like, so now you got your melody, you kind of, you got your changes or whatever you're going to do,
yeah.
And then all of a sudden you kind of come up with like a little French horn line that you hadn't thought of or something.
Right.
And that's part of my process for sure. It's sort of just like improvising, and Joel's just talking about like, as he's watching the show, which is, wow, that's
just
I've
noodling.
Never actually heard of that.
Just noodling, it actually kind of works sometimes. You get a few ideas. Chris is probably one of the most amazing improvisers. I've
He
ever
could
seen.
score a whole
He could
show
in real time.
and it would sound great.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
There would be one wrong note, but he would have meant to do the wrong
And
note.
the other thing I wanted to mention too, and I say this with all sincerity, is I think you guys are kind of lucky because, excluding myself, you know, I've never met Richard Gibb before, but I'm very familiar with him. And
Yeah.
Chris is here, and Chris is, and Kevin. These are three fine composers. These really are.
There's actually a fourth in the room.
But he sucks. But
He's in therapy. He's not recovering.
but I mean, it's you know, and Chris, all Chris is talking about is Divisi, and Chris is, you know, a fine composer.
Vienna trained.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you
Or
guys,
like a prodigy at like what? How old?
he was
were
the
you?
youngest member of ASCAP.
Yep.
How old was that?
I was 11.
He was such a freak. I gotta tell you, you know, I've known Chris since I was 17 years old, and Chris, in many ways, is my mentor. Chris is probably, really, truly one of the foremost experts on analog synthesis. Chris and I lived next door to each other for many years.
Yeah.
I mean, he was my landlord. We lived in a duplex.
Yeah.
And I was little composer on my side, and he was little composer on his side. And our wife, my ex and his current wife, went off to work, and Chris and I would go and hang out, and we'd pretend to be
If
composers.
you're taking notes, you should drunk, smoke dope.
Well, you know, we were in our early 20s. I mean, we were kids, and we
Yeah.
pretend to be composers, and you know, and
Yeah.
there's no way would I have been able to be a composer if my wife hadn't supported me
Yeah.
for,
Same
for
here.
many years.
Yeah,
Right.
no, my wife did.
Many
You
years.
need, behind, it's like they say, behind every composer is an extremely surprised mother-in-law.
Now, the other side that I have to tell, so I'll just tell my relationship with Chris. We both scored that marvelous series. It's actually still the number 2 show
Don't
in
laugh,
France.
please don't laugh.
Number 2 show in France right now.
Get ready to applaud.
Walker, Texas Ranger. and we would alternate episodes, and you know, that they would choose, like, we wouldn't exactly alternate because, you know, somebody in his brilliance would say, oh, this is a Chris show and this is a Kevin show or whatever. But
And usually they got it backwards.
yeah, whatever. But I remember, I mean, Chris really pushed me because I remember, because there's a bit of competition in that, you know, and I hadn't actually met Chris, and, you know, and he had been on the show maybe a year longer than I was before, or
3
a
years,
little bit.
actually.
Oh yeah, you started the first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're the only one that survived all the way through the whole thing, right?
Well,
Yeah, nobody else, because Ron
physically.
Raymond didn't. but
Why,
so
why do you think I quit?
well, but so I would hear what Chris had done, and I mean, it would really push me, and I actually encourage all you people, like, to listen, you know, listen to, like, Richard Gibbs stuff, listen to Joel's stuff, listen to Harry Gregson Williams, listen to John Powell.
Well, listen to these guys.
You know, listen to the stuff that people are doing and say, how the hell did they do that? You know, listen to, if you're doing lower budget stuff, because, you know, we've been kind of talking highbrow right now, but if you're going to do lower budget, and I have, and I continue to, like, say A&E, so now you have to write to the synth. You have to, because you're not going to get any live guys, because you have to make a living. So you have to write to your patches, and just like Joel said, if that A flat doesn't sound good, you know, you change, you're in G minor now.